Boston in 1880, Frances Perkins grew up in a comfortable middle-class Republican family without any conflicts. Her original name was Fanny Coralie Perkins, but changed it by law to Frances Perkins. When she was 2 years old, her family moved to Worcester, Massachusetts, where her dad opened a profitable stationery business, which is now known as the Butler Dearden paper. Her parents were always Congregationalists and always insisted Frances Perkins to follow their most important value: live for God and do something good. She attended Worcester Classical High School, which was greatly dominated by male students. Her parents never hesitated in her studies and encouraged her to attend and keep her academics at the highest level possible. After high school, Frances Perkins attended Mount Holyoke College, where she graduated in 1902.
She was president of her class and majored in chemistry and physics, receiving her BA degree in 1902. She became interested in labor issues after studying work conditions in Massachusetts and Connecticut factories. After graduation, Perkins taught at Monson Academy in Massachusetts and at Ferry Hall School in Lake Forest, Illinois. During her time in Philadelphia, she joined the Socialist Party and took classes at the University of Pennsylvania. In 1909, she received a fellowship from the Russell Sage Foundation and earned her MA in Economics and Sociology from Columbia University. From 1910 to 1912, Perkins served as the secretary of the New York Consumers League and taught at Adelphi College. She worked for industrial reform, women's suffrage, and the passage of a 54-work week bill in New York legislature. After witnessing the Triangle Shirtwaist Company fire in 1911, in which 146 workers died.
In 1918, Frances Perkins was the first ever female member appointed to the State Industrial Commission. 8 years later, she was named chairman for the State Industrial Commission, and Perkins, a dealmaker, had gained the trust of many political figures, and that helped put the city of New York in progressive reform. In 1929, Franklin D. Roosevelt promoted her to be the Industrial Commissioner of New York, the highest honor in the state labor department.
Frances Perkins began her journey to the cabinet. The main reason was that Franklin Roosevelt, the new governor of New York in 1929, and soon to be president, elected her as Industrial Commissioner. When Roosevelt became president in 1933, she was invited to his home in early February. The reason was that President Roosevelt wanted her as Secretary of Labor. A proud woman that would stand up for her beliefs, she told Roosevelt, "I don't want to say yes to you unless you know what I'd like to do and are willing to have me go ahead and try." Receiving support from President Roosevelt, she accepted the post as Secretary of Labor. Thus, Frances Perkins began her post in 1933. She served throughout all the Roosevelt terms up to 1945, making her the only person to serve 12 years on the cabinet. Once Secretary of Labor, Perkins put all her energy to the progressive movement and workers. Her vision of the people led to the creation and passing of the Wagner Act. The Wagner Act gave labor unions the right to organize. Shortly after, she helped pass the Fair Labor Standards Act, which lowered the weekly work hours to 48, and it helped establish a minimum wage in the year 1935. Perkins' trip to Pennsylvania to Carnegie Steelworkers in 1933 helped inspire her to create acts that would improve workers' lives. Much of her work involved the support and help of other people, such as Health Director Francis Townsend. He suggested an old age revolving pension plan which would give people over 60 a $200 monthly pension. Roosevelt's New Deal included the period known as 100 days, lasting from March 9 to June 16, 1933, in which Roosevelt passed 15 pieces of the New Deal legislation. The New Deal included the Emergency Banking Relief Act, which allowed the U.S. Treasury to inspect banks and ensure that the people's money was safe. He passed agricultural laws like the AAA, or Agricultural Adjustment Act, to reduce production and raise prices on crops. As part of the Roosevelt administration, Perkins became a crucial element in the Second New Deal, which included the Social Security Act as well as the Wagner Act. As Frances Perkins once stated, the New Deal was not a political plot or revolution, merely an attitude that expressed the people are what matter to the government. This became evident in the case of NLRB versus Jones and Laughlin Steel Corp.
In 1936, Perkins joined the United States in the International Labor Organization. On her way to a press conference in Geneva, she stopped by France to receive the world's Outstanding Woman Award from the Congress of International Federation of Business and Professional Women. Back in America, people saw this with horror. All the things she did were very radical for the 1930s. such as not keeping her husband's surname and being an activist. People were outraged. Martin Dees was chairman for the Un-American Activities Committee, and he sought to go after Perkins. At the time, the definition of Un-American activities meant practicing communist beliefs. He kept at her until January 21st, 1939, when J. Parnell Thomas, a representative from New Jersey, introduced a 40-page resolution for the impeachment of Perkins. In the paper, Perkins and two of her staff members were claimed for not enforcing the laws of immigration. In March 1939, she was declared free of all charges for insufficient facts. In 1940, Perkins wanted to leave as Secretary of Labor. She told Roosevelt that she achieved most of her goals. Roosevelt would not say anything on the matter, so Perkins decided to ask Eleanor Roosevelt to get an answer from the president. She did, and the answer was no. Absolutely no. Roosevelt said that she was fond of her in a personal sense and that without her, he would be lost and unprotected from all the things that undergo as president. Perkins, feeling a bit moved by the personal touch, decided to run for a third term as Secretary of Labor. In 1941, the United States entered World War II. As this happened, many workers went into strikes because they took the advantage that they felt secured enough to ask for more. Perkins took 12 labor leaders and they finally agreed to postpone the strikes while the war was in progress. Finally, on 1945, Perkins resigned as Secretary of Labor. However, this did not come easy. In his inauguration speech, the president said that Perkins' resignation was refused. However, as Perkins continued doing her job, on April 12, 1945, Franklin Delano Roosevelt died. Vice President Harry S. Truman became president, and he accepted Perkins' resignation. Frances Perkins then wrote a book titled The Roosevelt I Knew, and accepted Truman's appointment to the Civil Service Commission, where she fought for government workers for 6.5 years. After, in 1952, her husband died, and she started her career as a public speaker. In 1955, she was 75 years old, and she became the visiting professor at Cornell University School of Industrial and Labor Relations. She died at age 85 on May 14, 1965, in New York of a stroke.